I'm Liz Williamson. I'm a weaver and I've been an academic now for 20 odd years at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So this is a project called Alanakar Revisited, an Ari Embroidery Project. And it's here at the Embroiderers Guild, and I'm very pleased the way it looks in the small gallery here. The work comes together really well in the gallery. So I wanted to explain the origins of the exhibition. So it really goes back to 2001. And in that year I revisited India after several years, having not been there for quite a while. And also I was invited to participate in a conference in Hanoi in Vietnam, where artisans and facilitators and workshop leaders came together for 3 weeks and there were artisans from all over Asia. I think there were 14 countries represented. And it was really to see how they could work with their traditional textile designs for a more contemporary market. So I was invited to run the weaving component, so I had students that were with me for the whole 3 weeks, and then other students came for a couple of days. But they were very experienced weavers. There was also an embroidery workshop, there was a design workshop, and there was a natural dye workshop. So it was to look at how they could enhance or evolve their traditional designs to capture a new market. And that market was sometimes the next village or the next major city or another country. So there was a lot of variation in it. But the whole conference allowed me to shift my thinking of what I could do as a weaver and to work with artisan groups. And from 2001, for a number of years, I've been involved in various projects in Asia, which has really been working with artisans to tap into new markets. So they've taken different forms, but initially I did taught workshops in Pakistan, Tibet and India, working with weavers, developing new designs. And that all came from the Vital Traditions workshop, connections from the Vital Traditions workshop. And I met Ari Sen from Calcutta. She was a facilitator for the Indian artisans that came to Vital Traditions. And Ari ran a very interesting organisation in Calcutta called Craft Resources Centre, CRC, which worked with artisan groups all over India to facilitate new markets, essentially fair trade markets. And she's still working. Her son now has taken over CRC, but basically the organisation has gone from strength to strength. So I kept in touch with Ari, and on one of the visits discussed having my own designs woven in West Bengal, in Fulia, with a weaver called Shubhanka, who she'd been working with. So I did that for many years. And on one of those visits, I saw an Ari embroidery scarf, embroidered scarf. In terms of pattern, not unlike the one that I'm wearing, but in terms of colour, vastly different. So it was really colours which I didn't respond to at all. But what I did following that was to select colours for several runs of scarves, which a group in Howrah district in West Bengal, Sadosi Original, they're Ari embroidery specialists. So that was my first engagement with embroidery and Ari embroidery, and that led to this Alanakar project. The Alanakar project began really in 2014, 2015, when, having seen the work that the Sadosi Original group did, they're Ari embroidery specialists, and Ari embroidery came to India with the Mughal Empire. There were artisans came from Persia, but it's a type of embroidery that you see throughout Asia. It's done with a R needle, which is the needle has a small hook on end of it, and it's usually done on a frame, and many of the embroiderers work on large frames the size of a single bed, and the fabric's stretched over the frame, and the needle is above the fabric and the thread is below, and it's a very fast way of embroidering, and that's done by men mainly Muslim men, and there's a number of stitches, chain stitch, French knots, and something that's called Ari stitch. So, having visited the Zadosi original group in their small village, I decided to do an embroidery project with them, and it was really to have them involved in the design of development of new designs. It wasn't a co-design project, it was more of a collaborative discussion about the project. Ari Sen from CRC was central to it, and Hira Mondal was the leader, the key person from Zadosi Original. He had set up Zadosi Original several years earlier. So at the time, so this was 2014, 2015, I got together a number of design ideas that I'd had collected, or things which I was interested in seeing translated into embroideries. So this small grid of embroideries are some of the first that were done, and they illustrate some of the ideas that I was exploring through the embroidery. And the original exhibition that I had, which was less known as Alanakar, was here in Sydney at Barometer Gallery in the middle of 2015, and it showed a lot of the original ideas. And then since then, I've developed, in 2016, I had new designs done, and they're being shown here in this exhibition for the first time. Back to the original ideas. So these were just things that I picked. Clearly as a weaver, this is a weaving grid with the warp and weft embroidered in French knots. At that time, I just completed a workshop with Dorothy Caldwell, a Canadian artist who has also worked in India with embroideries, but with kantha embroidery and women who make quilts. But she did a lot of design. She worked in textiles, but really it was visual arts practice. And she had been in Sydney, and we'd had a workshop and done a lot of drawing. And so this white on white piece is called Dorothy's Hatching, because we were doing lots of hatching with long drawing sticks. And then the circles are Dorothy's circles. So there are just two ideas that came from my sketchbook of things done in Dorothy's workshop. I'd been visiting, by that time I'd been visiting India quite a lot, and West Bengal, and other states too, but I've seen it in West Bengal. Kalamkari technique is artisans paint on fabric with natural dyes and also with mordants, and they use callum, and this is a sketch of a callum. It's not accurate because it's usually the point is in the centre of the callum, but it's a little, it's made out of jute, jute fabric, and jute thread is wrapped around a stick, and that's what's used to apply the natural dye or the mordants onto the fabric. They paint very detailed paintings with their callum. And yeah, this one is a basket. Many of you see, and it's very reserved there in terms of colour, but it's a basket shape. And this one, which I particularly like, is from a stencil that my mother had used, or was in her collection of things which I inherited. But it had been, she is a great craftswoman, did a lot of embroidery, painting on china, and many, many things. And so I've elaborated on the stencil that she had, and I've called this Jane W.'s Flowers, and her name was Joan Williamson, so that's... And so 4 of these are on dyed silk, so I've used traditional dyes, and the callum is on fabric that's been dyed with logwood, and then the flowers one and the basket are dyed with eucalyptus. The two eucalyptus I use is Eucalyptus pulvularis, which is blackbutt. There's a tree outside my house. And the red colour is from Eucalyptus cinerea, which is silver dollar leaf, which is local also. It comes from a florist. But they're convenient for me living in Sydney. Sadly, I don't have a Eucalyptus cinerea tree growing close by. But a lot of the pieces in the exhibition have been embroidered on silk fabric that's been dyed with those two eucalyptus, and also sometimes the thread has been dyed. So I've used cotton embroidery thread, it's mercerised, but with steaming you do get a colour. You don't get a really strong colour with because it's mercerised, but you do get the eucalyptus colours, the thread. Polaris is with iron mordant, it's always a grey, and with cinerea you get this lovely range of red to apricot, pinky tones, and together you get a nice mix of those colours. A lot of embroideries continuing on that, they're just different ideas that I was exploring at the time. These were some with plant-dyed embroidery threads and some with plant-dyed silk. So there's a mix. So it was just exploring different ideas in this collaborative experimental project with Hira. We met several times in Calcutta and I visited his village, and from years I've been told that it was a very harmonious village, that it was very peaceful. The various communities there, the religious communities, all got on well. But it's Muslim men that do the embroidery, and there was a large proportion, I think it was about half and half in terms of Muslim and Hindu, that lived in the village, along with Christians, which is usual combinations in Indian villages. So it's just an hour or so north of Kolkata in West Bengal. So this circle idea, the oval shape, these are things that I've drawn, especially the oval shape, and looking at a grid. I mean, the grid comes from my weaving practice and being so involved in that and thinking about how the two different lots of threads interact. The oval is a shape I've used quite a lot. I've had made jacquard weavings with an oval shape and similar to these. So there's themes that are in this Alanakar project, which have been in my weaving for some time. So these are straight lines with French knots, my beginning of my love affair with French knots. These are very beautiful. These are really fine French knots, just in a grid. Actually, this came from a marking on a glass vase that I have, so that I just translated those by drawing the lines, and then rather than having a block of lines, decided to break it down into 7 sections. And again, this is another oval piece, but dyed, so you can see just experimenting different options and different colourways. And another one with the lines. So these two are called earth lines, and there is originally a third piece in the series, but now has a different home. It's actually, I had an exhibition of some of these pieces at Artisan Gallery in Mumbai, and that piece was purchased from that exhibition. So this is again from me really elaborating on the lines. I see them as weaving lines. When I'm drawing them, I really see it as weaving the weft in a weaving. When I'm weaving at the loom, I'm imagining what the weft is going to be like. So I'm continually thinking about adding colour to the weaving, and the weaving stretching out in front of me in terms of my imagination. And it was the same with this. So I was just thinking about the lines and drawing, and what repeating those lines did, because that's an essential part of weaving, was the repetition. And I've continued that in my sketches. And I think the translation into French knots just highlights the movement which is in the lines. And often it's like it's looking at a surface, maybe it's a rippling surface, a very uneven surface, maybe it's the light shining on a surface, or in some of them it's much more about the horizon too, or creating a landscape view. But anyway, I'm a little addicted to my lines, and I'm still doing them. This year I did a project, isolation project, and my sketchbook was full of lines, so it's continued. This is my line drawing for one of the designs. That it's been pricked, the lines have been really pricked with a very fine needle, and that's to transfer the design onto the fabric. So with all of these, they would have done that. They prick the design. In this case, it's just along the lines. And then it's onto a tracing paper. Then the paper's laid onto the fabric, and a solution of lime and kerosene or chalk, I'm not too sure what it is rubbed over the tracing paper, and the dots are transferred onto the fabric. So these, back to the Zodossia regional group, at the time these embroideries were done, 2015, there were about 20 people working in the group, and that included 2 girls. They didn't come to the workshop with the men, they would work at home. The men, embroiderers, would work in the workshop in the Howrah District village. But I learnt about the 2 girls, Jasmina and Ashida, because they're profiled on the International Fair Trade website for International Women's Day. So they were, at that time, they were 19 or 20, and they both had declined their parents' arranged marriage, which is a really major thing to do in a rural village in West Bengal, especially at that time, and they wanted the experience of working and earning their living. And I know they were involved in the embroidery of these pieces. I have a photograph of Jasmina embroidering one of these. It's actually the one that was sold, Earthlines 1. And so you see her with the embroidery at the table, and also all of my threads laid out, waiting to be used. So the profile, I have not met them, I'd love to meet them, but the profile in the International Fair Trade website for International Women's Day was quite informative. Jasmina spent the money she earned on her father's hospital or health bills, and for her daughter to get for her sister to get an education. And the other girl, Ashmina, just said that she used it for her own interests. So I thought it was very interesting, the different approaches of what they did with their money, but really for them to be working and not as young girls and not taking up their parents' arranged marriage, it was significant. I'd love to visit them still and see if they have actually got married and if they're still embroidering. From the original project, there are 2 more pieces here. So one, again, dyed with logwood. This is, I've just called it Alanakar 21, which the 21 refers to the number of when it was done and the designs, and nothing more significant than that. But nice relationship between the embroidery and the colour of the fabric. It was pot dyed with logwood. And also this one here, which is called Bhujar circles, flower circles. So this is on fabric dyed with black butt. And with this and with others, I really left it to the group to decide where on the piece of fabric that I'd dyed they would actually do the embroidery. Because this is a group that are used to be giving instructions for every detailed thing, like where to place the embroidery, how to do it, the colour combinations and things. So in this project there are quite a lot of elements where they have to make the decision. They are engaged in the design process. So in terms of expanding their ideas and getting them engaged in the design process was one of the central aspects of the project also for them to see contemporary designs. They do contemporary designs, but they're often linked to their more traditional designs, like they'll be doing flower motifs or circles or shapes which relate to some of the traditional Mughal motifs, similar to in my scarf. Having seen all of those first group of embroideries and had a small exhibition at Barometer Gallery in 2015, I then worked on new designs for the group to embroider, and all of them used my plant dyeing, my two favourite colours, which are shown on this piece of silk fabric. So the pink is from the Eucalyptus cinerea, silver dollar leaf, and the darker colour is from the blackbutt. And sometimes I use a mordant, I use iron mordant, sometimes there's no mordant. Most of the fabric's been dyed in what we know as an eco bundle, so the leaves are being wrapped into the silk fabric and then steamed for a period of time. So it's all a bit random and haphazard in terms of the colouring, but it's a lovely mix of colours. And that's what I've used for the background of these three, which I've also called earth lines. So there's earth lines 4, 5 and 6. And again, it's just, the first two are exploring straight lines. This one has changed it slightly with the lines being formed into sections. No major variation in terms of my thinking. It was just, again, exploring my line and the qualities of the line, the repeat of the line and the shaping. And these I know that I selected the fabric and the placement of them and sent them to the group, or sent them to Irani at CRC to be done. So these were done in 2006, but this is the first time they've been exhibited. They've just been finished, just in time for the exhibition, and along with the 3 longer pieces too. So at the end of the exhibition, in a smaller square space, I have 3 long panels. They're nearly 2 metres long, and again they're sort of detailed lines of French knots, and again with the same dyes. In this case, the threads were dyed in cinerea, silver dollar leaf, and here blackbutt. And there's a third which we'll see in a few minutes, but before I'm going to see that, I will talk about the small weavings. So there's 5 small weavings in the exhibition with embroideries. In the first exhibition in 2015, I was waiting for them to be sent from West Bengal, but they didn't arrive in time for the exhibition. So I just had some weavings in the exhibition. But they arrived after the exhibition. But basically, they're the similar ideas of exploring different types of line and circles and shapes, but on my hand-woven fabric. So the fabric is a mix of wool and it's a wool blend warp, and the darker ones with the fine stripe are the weft is wool blend. And in this one here, weaving grid, the weft here has also been dyed with cinerea and blackbutt. And it was dyed in a hank, so it's just variegated. And the grid has been embroidered on top of it. Weavings with embroideries, and again the circles reappeared, and the lines, variations of the lines, just exploring different options which to be taken forward. And then the final piece is another panel which has been embroidered onto the fabric dyed in black white. So I'd like to acknowledge some people for assisting with this exhibition. Firstly, Arani Sen at Craft Resources Centre in Calcutta, and Hira Mondal from Zadosi Original, and all of the embroiderers that work with him. So I have a list of the group from that time, but I don't have what they embroidered. But anyway, from the Zadosi Original group, I have heard that they benefited from the original project in that it expanded their ideas of what they could do in some of their designs, because it just gives them a different approach to designing, and that was one of the key things that we set out to do with the project. So here at the Embroiderers Guild, I want to thank them for allowing me to have the exhibition, and particularly April Spears. She's been fantastic in terms of the administration for the exhibition, and she's fantastic at setting up the work to up and down the ladder, like so many times yesterday. So thank you, April, very much for assisting with the exhibition and inviting me too.